it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today is a fun one as usual, but we are going to be doing tone on tone with stencils. So I am going to be using a whole range of inks today. There are no rules to say that if you're using a dye ink that you can't use a hybrid ink or a pigment ink or something like that to mix it in there and get the colours depending on what you have. So I am starting off with Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide and Wild Dandelion, which is a dye ink. Now, the only thing I do recommend is that you use different brushes for these different types of inks. I do think that is important. So I have one brush there with the red around the handle, and I know that these are for my Oxides, and the ones with the blue tape around the handle are for my dye inks, and I only have the Gina case, so that's fine. And I'm just doing a really light layer. Now, I actually do want this to be pretty light, and as you can see, I'm not having to dip in with too much more ink the first layer, but then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add a little bit more because I want it to go dark in the top right hand corner and then really fade out. Now, I'm going to make 3 finished cards with you today, and you'll see in some of the other ones that I have actually come in a little bit less than this. So this is real-time blending at the moment. I've come in with a little bit less than this, and then turned it around and come in from the other corner just a little bit as well, so just a different variation. But then I'm going to take any stencil and I'm going to show you some different types of stencils. That's the idea of doing some different, several different cards today. This one is called Folk Flowers by Paper Rose, and I don't think it's available anymore. But this one is sort of more an entire image, I guess. It could be an all over stencil. And so I'm going to use this starting off with the Wild Dandelion, which is basically just a darker yellow, a darker shade of yellow. However, I do decide to come in later on and add a bit more colour. Now, I must say this yellow one probably, I like the other ones a lot, and this one I'm not sure that I should have added in the more colour like I did, but we live and we learn, and that's all good. But I decided to bring in a little bit of spiced marmalade. And with this second layer of ink, I'm almost getting more of a tapping motion than I would say like a blending motion, because I really do want to blend this from darker in the corner to light. Now, I have switched around my piece of paper. This is just because I hold it with my left hand and I find that easiest, but you can see that I wanted it. Now, I probably could have stopped there. I wanted it to go dark in the left-hand corner and then move into light as it goes. As the yellow gets lighter, I wanted the orangey yellow to get lighter as well. Then I decided to add in a second wee flower down there, which is fine, but I'm actually going to bring in a little bit darker color, and it's the Abandoned Coral. Now, sometimes you'll find that when you do this technique, you will, you try it with some blues and you absolutely love it, but then you try it with some yellows and you're like, I'm not sure it's got the same effect, and that's okay. It will happen sometimes. So if you don't love the outcome, try changing up the colors. It might not just be the technique that you don't love. It might just be the color combination. It might just be the color, the colors full stop that just, don't particularly work or don't particularly catch your eye. But mind you, what doesn't catch your eye may well catch somebody else's eye. So, we can always make it better. Now, this one I'm going to come in. This is some Sea Glass, I believe. This is a blue one. These are Gina K dye inks, and I must admit they are a dream for blending. Now, this piece of cardstock had a random piece of green splotch. It was like some ink on it already. I don't know how it got there, but I do need to bear that in mind when I am going to trim down these sides, because when I am ink blending, I generally do like to trim down the edges afterwards, because I do find that you get that harsh line from blending, basically ink on the sides of your cardstock. And although I don't mind that if I'm inking all over, when I'm doing partial inking like I am here, I prefer, it's my personal preference to cut that off. And I know I'll be cutting these down, so I will just bear that in mind when I'm doing my inking. Now, this stencil is a Brutus Monroe stencil. It is called Build a Butterfly. And I've had this in my stash for ages, but I re-found it and it's really fun. I really enjoyed using this one, and I've got a few techniques that I might give a go with this, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm just going to use the same ink, but a much heavier application. Again, heavier down the bottom, lighter up towards the top. And I think with this dye ink, and maybe it's the colors. I'm not sure if it's the colors or the types of inks. Maybe I got a better impression, but I seem to like this one better, even though it was done in a relatively similar fashion. Now, again, this one is sort of an individual image. So I'm using that base butterfly to get my base, and then I'm going to add layers. But it doesn't matter if you've got a stencil that just has one image. It doesn't matter if you've got a stencil that has an all-over pattern, or if you've got an all-over image. We can build a single one to be multiple like we have here. And again, I'll show you in the next one as well. So lots of different images and lots of different ways to go about, creating the same technique. So I'm going to take a slightly deeper color, and I'm going to add in the detailed part of the stencil. Now, as I said, it just depends what kind of stencil you're using. In the first one, I was just able to add different colors and give them that, make a gradient blend there. But this one, there's a layering part to the stencil, so I'm able to use a different color. Again, I'm still going to come in heavier down the bottom and fade it out towards the top right-hand corner of this panel. But nonetheless, I'm able to use another color just because it's a layering one. And, what you may find is that you could do this with some stamps as well, and you would be able to ink it up in a darker color and then move to lighter. There's nothing to say you can't do that, but maybe stencils are just a little bit easier. So I'm going to leave that blue one for the minute, and then I'm going to show you the green one that I did. Now, this is a really old Crafters Workshop stencil that has been with me since the beginning. Now, I'm not sure if you would call these feathers or leaves, but they're just absolutely beautiful and so versatile for all sorts of occasions. So this one here I did in the top right hand corner as well, but let's go ahead and turn these into some cards, because this was just some basic ink blending and some stencils, and these are going to turn out gorgeous. So doesn't have to be complicated. You can make beautiful, simple cards just with a bit of ink blending, and sometimes that can also take practice. Now, there are lots of videos out there for that around techniques and tips. If you are really unsure about ink blending, sometimes it can be the ink, it can also definitely be the paper, but it can also be the blending tool that you are using. So try change up one of those factors at a time, I would say. And for example, with the paper, something with a bit of a slick coating as well. For example, the Tim Holtz watercolor paper, I find on the smooth side of that, something that's a little bit tricky to blend, that's what I would reach for, just because of that coating makes the inks glide and gives you a chance to blend them before they set and you get any harsh lines. But anyhow, that's a whole different topic. I am using the Trinity Stamps Birthday Sentiments, Simply Sentiments Birthday Set. This is one that I got not too long ago, and I'm loving it. Something a little bit different. I'm using 1mm foam tape, and I'm actually going to do it twice. So this is going to give me a good, decent amount of height. These cards are relatively simple, relatively plain and simple, but I think quite striking. And when I'm doing a plain and simple-ish card, I like to have a good border. And two things can achieve that. One, having actual space for a decent sized border. So I have taken off a 1/4 inch all round. So I took a 1/2 inch off each of two of the sides. And then also adding some dimension. And I did that with the foam tape. Now I am going to add on some little gems and things, but I'll do that all at the end. We're doing these production style at the moment. So I trim these down using my trimmer. I love my Spellbinders trimmer for trimming. It is my absolute go-to and the only one I use when it comes to trimming. I'm going to use, this is the Ribbon Bloom, I think it's called, Sentiments. I really like this one just because it's just a very delicate sort of scripty, elegant style, I would say, and there is definitely some more in this set which are catching my eye, but I will link a couple of these stamp sets down below. They're absolutely stunning and really good quality photopolymer stamps. As I said, I'm going to cut this down and then pop this onto a card base. Now, I did do the first one on a white card base, and I think that looks really striking and stunning too, but you could also use a coloured card base. You could always use a coloured matting layer and then put it on a white card base. You could use a black matting layer and then put it on a white or coloured card base. For this one, I decided to go with a little bit of blue, even though this is actually not the same blue that I used in the inking with the inks, I still think this goes quite nicely. I did use 2 layers of the 1mm foam tape. It's 1 inch wide, which is really handy. So 2 millimeters of dimension. And then this is this one here, ready to go. Again, we're not finished them. We're just doing this production style. And then for whatever reason, I had decided to do the others landscape. I didn't necessarily plan that, but it's just sort of how it turned out. So I decided that I would do this one portrait just to do something a little bit different and show you that it works just the same. So I'm going to trim this one down again and then pop this one, I think, onto a white background. But you can see that it did end up quite red at the bottom, and I probably was aiming for more of an orangey yellow, but that's okay. I still think it looks lovely. Pop it into my stamping platform. I have the Ultinew sticky grid there, and that's what grips them. I have no more magnets or anything like that, which I definitely love, have shifted to, without getting any of the fancy, the new stamping I guess they're stamping tools that you can get these days. I just converted my old one by popping one of the sticky grids in there, and it works perfectly. I do trim it down a little bit, and there is a video somewhere on my channel as well not too long ago that I showed just how they come and my thoughts on them and a bit of a review and how I trim them down and how I pop them in. And anyway, for this one, I decided to do the coloured matting layer, but then I'm going to go onto a white card base. Again, the orange is actually not one of the oranges that I used in there, but that's because I don't have many coordinating cardstocks at all. I have about 5 or so Gina K ones, and that's about it. But that's okay, we make do with what we've got. And then this is where I'm going to add on a few little sparklies. You could add some gems, you could add some diamond stickles, you could add some enamel dots, you could add some Nouveau drops, all the good things you could add at this point. But I decided to do a little of these few flat embellishment sequins, I guess. These ones are from Simon Says Stamp, and actually this one pack did maybe all 3 of the cards, I think. Maybe I changed it for the blue. But they really pick up, they're sort of iridescent, and they pick up what's in the background really, really well. So these ones are obviously really yellow, and then I can pop that one to the side and work on the blue one. Maybe I did different for the green, actually. But yeah, same sentiments for the blue one, and it picks it up really nicely. These are great little mixes to have on hand. Anyhow, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for supporting me, and I hope that you have enjoyed these gorgeous little tone-on-tone with stencils cards today. Stunning, but really, really simple to create. Make sure you're subscribed and give me a thumbs up, but other than that, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!